guests, our president, board members, and speakers. Charles Darwin had once said, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change." In today's era of digitalization, corporate social responsibility is one area in which digitization has helped companies to advance. Technology has reshaped CSR in multiple ways. It enables companies to reach a wider audience, engage stakeholders more effectively, and enhance transparency. It is imperative for Indian companies to integrate technology into their CSR strategy to make a meaningful impact. Today's conclave will focus on this aspect of CSR in the digital era. I would like to make a brief announcement. We were looking forward to the virtual presence of Shri Harsh Malhotra, Union Minister of State, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, and Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, Government of India, at our conclave today. Unfortunately, due to some unforeseen meetings, he is unable to join us virtually as planned. To open this interesting deliberation, I would now invite Ms. Pinky Mehta, President, Bombay Chamber, and Chief Financial Officer, Aditya Birla Capital, to deliver the welcome address.
Thanks, Shruti. Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to each one of you to this conclave on CSR in the digital era. At the outset, I would like to express my thanks to all the esteemed speakers today. I'm sure that with such expert speakers, the deliberations will be very enlightening and useful. In today's boardrooms, most senior executives will recognize four main dimensions of corporate social responsibility: environmental, ethical, philanthropic, and economic. However, in today's world, with the technology and digital platforms revolutionizing the way we live, work, and connect, CSR strategies need to embrace technology for driving meaningful impact. With AI and blockchain, ChatGPT, and data analytics, digitalization emerges as a potent instrument for organizations to magnify their CSR endeavors, engage stakeholders, and foster a culture of transparency and good governance. Leveraging technology for social good is not just a choice anymore, it is an imperative. With the new CSR mandate, companies in India must look to integrate digitalization into their CSR journeys. While data analytics and AI-driven insights will empower them to make data-informed decisions, digital platforms can be used to amplify that CSR messaging. Take, for example, Microsoft AI for Earth program. Using artificial intelligence and machine learning, Microsoft empowers environmental organizations to tackle global challenges like climate change, biodiversity loss, and water scarcity. Through data-driven insights, AI for Earth is able to offer more informed decision-making. Transparency and accountability are crucial when creating a CSR strategy. For example, blockchain technology, a branch of AI, can create immutable records of CSR initiatives, ensuring that all reported activities are verifiable and tamper-proof. This improves the credibility of the CSR reports and helps to identify areas in need of improvement. AI can be used to design and implement programs that address social issues such as education, healthcare, and poverty alleviation. AI algorithms can analyze large data sets to identify trends and gaps in education systems, allowing companies to tailor their CSR efforts to specific needs. Similarly, AI-powered health diagnostic can be used for healthcare programs in the remote and underserved areas. Crowdfunding platforms offer another area where technology can be applied to leverage CSR initiatives. This platform allows companies to raise funds for charitable projects or community support initiatives. Companies can also use this platform to connect to community members, to foster collaborations, and gather feedback on CSR programs. These open dialogues enables a more inclusive and responsive approach, thus ensuring that the organization's CSR efforts can address real needs and create a lasting impact. Cross-sector collaborations are also easier to facilitate through technology. Using digital platform, companies can partner with NGO, government agencies, and the academia to help address complex social and environmental challenges. This will create a synergy of knowledge and innovations which can lead to more effective and sustainable solutions. However, implementing digital drive CSR strategies come with its own challenges. We need to carefully address privacy and data security concerns. Moreover, the digital divide, which is a gap between the regions that have access to the modern technology and those who do not, especially in our rural areas, could exclude certain communities from participating in CSR programs. We need to give importance to inclusivity in our tech-driven CSR initiatives. Ethical dilemmas may also emerge when balancing technology benefits with social responsibility. It is a path we need to tread the caution. Today's conclave aims to deliberate upon the topic CSR in digital era. In the first half, we have Aloka Majumdar, Chairperson CSR Committee, Bombay Chamber and Managing Director, Global Head of Philanthropy and Head of Sustainability India, HSBC, who will share with us insight on the topic leveraging technology for CSR. Welcome, Aloka. Aloka will provide practical applications of CSR integration into the business and will also walk us through how she effectively facilitates collaborations and knowledge sharing on this very important area in our organizations. I'm sure we will gain valuable lessons from our experience. I also hope the discussions and knowledge sessions will open up more dialogues on the subjects and help to shape India's CSR landscape. Now I know we are looking forward to hear from our expert speakers, so I will hand over the mic to our companion Shruti to guide us through the rest of the event. Have a good day and please make it more interactive. Okay? Thank you.
I would like to invite Ms. Aloka Majumdar, MD, Global Head of Philanthropy and Head of Sustainability India, HSBC, and Chairperson of the CSR Committee for context setting, leveraging technology for CSR. In her capacity as Global Head of Philanthropy, Aloka focuses on overseeing the execution of HSBC's global philanthropy strategy and aligning it with the ESG pillars of transition to net zero and building inclusion and resilience. She worked closely with multiple stakeholders, including leadership teams in the UK and markets where HSBC has a presence. Aloka heads sustainability for HSBC Group in India, which comprises the bank and other HSBC companies and leads the fulfillment of the growing sustainability priorities and initiatives for the group in India. She is a member of the Group Sustainability Executive Committee and of the HSBC India Executive Committee. Her expertise lies in the fields of financial inclusion, skills development, and climate change. She has worked extensively with a wide range of stakeholders that include community-based organizations, multilateral agencies, the academia, and central and state governments. She was awarded the Parivartan Sustainability Leadership Award in 2016 and recognized by Social Venture Partners with Grant Thornton Knowledge Partner as a Women Exemplar in 2019. Graduating with honors in political science from University of Calcutta, Aloka started her career as a financial journalist, specializing in covering banking and finance. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shruti, and that's a very long introduction, so thank you for bearing with that. So first of all, a very warm welcome to everyone, and Pinky, thank you so much for opening the session with a very, very clear thing that we try to make it interactive and learn from there, and of course, a huge thank you for having me here. And of course, there's Sandeep, and then Sandeep, you and your entire team, thank you for having us here, and it's an honor to be chairing this committee. So I'll start the day. You know, I was entering the hotel today, and me and my colleague Adil, and it was refreshing because the person who was the security person actually said, "Aapko CSR conclave mein jana hai." So then I realized, CSR as a term is becoming quite popular. I mean, there was a time, and I've been in the sector for a very long time now. It's been, I joined this sector way back in 2004. And from then to now, we do see that, the entire space has evolved a lot. Of course, there's been interesting challenges that we've faced. I remember there was a time when CSR, many people said, was more good to do thing. And now it's no more good to do. It's like have to do. And also, I think the best thing is that the companies are realizing the value of CSR that it brings to the company as a whole. So that, I think, is a big change that I've seen over the past decade. So, I have a presentation, but I'll just mention, I don't know how many of you were there last time, but we started with how to create an impactful CSR strategy. And I think today, 1 year down the line, we've chosen a subject which is technology. So from strategy to execution, what we've seen is technology actually becoming one of the very, very critical component for all of us who are working in the CSR space, from both sides, both from the donor side as well as the non-profit side. In both sides, I think technology is going to play a very important role, and that's where we are. So I'll, just a second, let me just... Sorry, can someone help me? So I'll just start in terms of, left or right? Ye wala. Achha. So, first to start with, I think this is something, nothing new for you in the sense that, where we are operating. We are operating in a space where the amount is increasing. So why CSR professionals across the country are becoming important for the boardroom is because sheer amount of money going into the sector. So you can see that there is a money which is mentioned at about 26,000 crore. And that's for 21-22. You have a massive year-on-year increase on CSR. So when you're spending so much money, it only is prudent that we get the best governance, we get the best systems in place for us to spend that kind of money. So I think that's the sheer amount of money, I think, is driving all of us, all CSR professionals, to take a very, very important role when it comes to the board of any institution. The second that you see, just a second, yeah. The second that we have seen is beyond this, beyond the money, an interesting piece. I've just picked a few things. It isn't really a very robust presentation. But where is technology coming in? Now, from the time compliance came in and we had supposed to spend the 2%, you've seen two things. One is that you're seeing that the disclosures are moving to a tech platform. So for all of us now, when we are giving our, when we are filing our disclosures, we are doing it on a tech platform. So that's the first thing we've seen that, which has evolved over the years and becoming important. And I don't know how many of you have faced, but when you're doing your disclosures and we are filling in the, your ongoing program partners, the amount of diligence that's required, because there are instances where I've seen that, companies, they've tried to put an ongoing program, but it's not been accepted because you have to learn what is ongoing. There cannot be a gap in between. So all I'm saying is that we are slowly, what we are realizing that, understanding the platform, understanding the disclosure system is a very important part of our job as CSR professionals. The second thing which has been why I have chosen the second point is, as in my role as the Global Head of Philanthropy, I get to interact with close to about 52 countries across the globe. Now, we are definitely very mature market because we really have a very large number of nonprofits across the country. Then the biggest difference, if you ask me, that we've seen is that nonprofits in the West are more charitable. Non-profits in our part of the world are more developmental. That's the big change. So it's not charity for us, developmental. Now, the big change that's happening even in the West, if you can say over the past couple of years, is that they are also moving largely from charity to development. And why that is happening is primarily because of the climate piece. Because in this entire piece, CSR is not remaining unique or ad hoc. CSR is getting integrated with ESG, and therefore you see a lot of these, the approach of the West is also changing from charity to development. So that's one. Second is we've seen that, in some of the countries, you take US for example, and I don't know whether you're aware, but US has a mandatory spends, which I realized I didn't know that US have to spend. It's a small spend, but every US company of a certain size has to spend a certain amount of money, giving small grants to a large number of nonprofits. So that was a revelation. And what I realized is that they actually have a database which is controlled by the government. So if I'm a CSR person and I want to give a donation to one of the nonprofits, I don't go back to the nonprofit to ask for documents. I basically go on the site and I get all the documents from that site, from everything, from your registration to your, or whatever forms, your tax exemption, including your financials. So that's something which I thought was quite interesting. And what I see in India is actually also evolving. You do have Darpan today, and you have a lot of other private portals who are also having this, having the NGO data which is available. Interesting pieces. Darpan is largely driven by it's your and my. So if I'm a nonprofit who is registered in Darpan, it is my responsibility to update it. It's not the government's responsibility to update it. But the fact is, I think increasingly governments are going to use these platforms, and so are companies going to use these platforms to select whom are you going to give funding to. So therefore, getting into these platforms are going to be important, and there will be a time, I'm assuming, with the way the segment is growing, to have the right information there, or updated information from the organization's part there. The second is, why do we need CSR? I mean, why do we need technology? You're talking about you have a great strategy, you have a great set of partners, but what is there? Where is the need? I think the first is the governance piece, which is coming up in a big way, and I'll actually explain it through an HSBC presentation in terms of what we do. Though I don't really speak HSBC when I'm speaking outside, this is just I'm taking as an example, because due diligence is right on our head, and that's the biggest challenge today. There. So therefore, I think governance will be the critical thing, and the more you bring governance into your tech platform, it becomes easier for CSR professionals to manage your portfolio. So for example, in HSBC, we are today dealing with about 100 plus non-profit partners. Almost humanly impossible for a small team, and we are never going to be big teams. Let's take that. I mean, let's keep it in. Foundations who have on-ground presence and doing on-ground work will have big teams. But you and I who are working at the corporate office, we are unlikely to have big teams. So therefore, the way, and governance of course lies with us. The responsibility of governance lies with us. So therefore, I think that's a very, very important part that we need to do. Second is increasing compliance. So today you have disclosures. Tomorrow, you're going to have more disclosures, because today you have a CSR disclosure. Tomorrow, your 1,000 listed companies in India, you have BRSR. Then you are going to have ESG. There are organizations, many of us have international presence as well. There will be other reportings that you need to do internationally as well. So therefore, increasing compliance would mean that you capture the right data for you to report accordingly. So this is something which is going to drive the use of technology for all of us. The third piece is that of measurement and impact assessment. It's very directly linked to your 25,000 crore, which is again increasing humongously on year. There is no way you can do monitoring and evaluation with this kind of budget, which is not technology driven. So it has to be there. I do have a slightly different aspect, and this is something that we discuss with a lot of my peers, is that when you're doing monitoring and evaluation, it can't be just technology though. It has to be a mix. It is a slightly digital piece works for India because it's a diverse country. But having said so, I think capturing data, reporting data, and measuring your impact is going to be another driver for using technology in the work we do. Reporting and communications, it's all today social media. I have a background in media where I used to be in a newspaper and a magazine. I don't think many of you in this room read newspapers and magazines anymore. You also read it on the phone. So therefore, I think from a communications perspective and reporting perspective, that's also going to become completely driven by technology. Process improvements going to evolve. So I heard a very interesting thing. We were talking to one of the international organizations here in India. And Shruti, please keep time when I have to finish because I can go on speaking. So one of the interesting is they are asking for non-terrorist certificate. I don't know whether any of you have heard about it. I haven't. This was the first time I heard about it. And it's a large conglomerate. They're actually asking non-profits to provide that. I said, we can't in India. We are still not getting there. It's an international organization. But I'm just saying that's where we are getting to. So you're going to get various kind of certificates that you will require. And you will therefore have to kind of rely on technology for you to have this in place. And of course, institutional memory. Very often, being in a bank, we are asked for data. We had a recent instance where the regulator actually wanted data for 10 years. So they basically said that we want to know what you've made donations for the last 10 years, where you've made it, just not 2%, but total donations made, which we thought was an excellent idea because we thought we have to think differently. It's just we have to kind of keep track of the donations made because you have to understand that while it's donations, because we work in a financial institution, non-profits across the world are also used very extensively for money laundering. And therefore, this is a very important piece for us. We keep record, we keep data, where we are giving, how we are giving is going to be very important. I'll go to the next slide. So this is a slide where it's a bit about HSBC. I'm not going to talk about it. I just thought I put up the number there about the $100 million just to say that, we cannot manage $100 million sitting out of India if we don't have technology. There's no way we can do that. And that's where we've seen a huge amount of work that happens in the entire grant management cycle. Today you're going to listen to many of the speakers, and we have a good friend, Jignesh, here as well. Say the Big Four has actually invested a lot in creating technology platforms for companies to use, to have the full cycle, to manage the full cycle, grant cycle. But it's going to be very, very important because as a company, if I'm spending that kind of money, and you have many large Indian companies who are spending this kind of money alone in India. So therefore, for them to manage that grant and to report on that is going to be a very important piece. Next is the diverse country. You have multiple partners that you work with. For an organization like HSBC in India alone, we have 100 plus partners. At one point of time, we had 189 because of FCRA. We couldn't do one sub-granting program, and therefore it came down to 100. But even 100 isn't a small number. It's a large number. So therefore, how you manage that is going to be important. The first is the project conceptualization stage, and I spoke about due diligence in this. I'll tell you, for a global institution, like us, our due diligence is live through the year. So the way it works is, and very interesting, we've actually got, suddenly we've got a case where, say, one of the board members in one of the countries has got something which is to do with some fraud, etc. And that. So the point is that because this amount of money is being think that live due diligence is going to be is something that we are following, but I think this is going to become quite important. I know that most financial institutions across the world, because we deal with many clients and we have to do live due diligence for them, that is something which is prevalent, but may not be for the other sectors. But I think for the CSR sector, this is going to be a very, very important part of the work. The second is contracting. I don't know how many in this group, just to take a vote, I mean, when you do contracting, do you do online or so? For online, can I see a show of hand that you do a contracting online? So you have just a few who are doing contracting online, whereas most of us were still following a physical document where we are signing an MOU. If you're talking about, say, agreements for $100 million, it's almost literally impossible for anyone to do it manually, even if you have a team across the country. So I think this is one thing where we see a lot of change. There is a platform called Legality, which is used by us, and all our contracting today is actually done through Legality. And this is something which has kind of helped a lot, both our partners as well as ourselves. So that's the second piece. Third piece is monitoring and evaluation, and this is something we have third-party monitoring and evaluation for a long time. This is a very interesting thing because, CSR professionals, you just can't go to your partner, and I know that our NGO partners are dealing with multiple reporting formats. And that's a terrible thing. I can understand that because we work as partners. It's not easy to, write to so many of your donors and in different formats to say that this is what we are doing. I think there will have to be some conversation, and this is something, Sandeep, Pinky, we may just want to take it to the government as well, to have a uniform monitoring and evaluation platform for us, which can be basic, but this is something which will make life simpler also for the partners whom we are working with, as well as the donors that we are working with. This is one piece. But I have to, and I have my colleague Adil and Prachita here, we've had a very interesting case. Not taking a name, but giving you an example of our total partner portfolio, the organization which was most tech savvy, we found major frauds there. So what did happen? It's not that the organization is fraud. They were using a franchisee model. So there was a head office, they were doing some programs which they were managing themselves, but there were others who were running it as a franchise in various things. And we got it was done through whistleblowing, where we got calls. So we are always trying to say technology is important, but in this space where we are working with a very diverse and difficult target audience, it's important for all of us, both from a donor and a donee perspective, to actually also be there physically on ground for us to know that. That's a thing. And of course, last is project closure, which is your impact assessment. Today, you're supposed to do impact assessment after 1 year of completion of project. I'm quite sure that's quite tough for most of us, but technology makes that simpler. So that's something is another thing that I wanted to highlight. I hope I'm not get boring. I'll move quickly to the next slide and try to close. I think one of the things that I'm just giving a few ideas for all of us to take forward, and of course is going to hear our other panelists today, to take points which we take back and implement it or integrate it with the programs that we run. I think huge amount of data. I think the amount of data that we are dealing with, I think the government is also already doing a brilliant job of getting the disclosures online, so that data is going to go, it's getting stored somewhere. So, if the government today wants to know, but I think this data piece is going to be important, but with data comes the issue of data privacy. So I think that's also something we as professionals, we need to know. So for example, we were, as a global organization, again, we were trying to see that if we can have an operations team set out of, sitting in India or in Poland, but doing things for the rest of the world. We were told we can't. Today, there's something called payments data localization, that is called data privacy. So therefore, data moving from one country to another country is becoming a challenge. So therefore, when we're thinking of technology, even the technology providers will have to keep this in mind when they're providing the solutions for this. So that's one. I'm not going to read what is written there. I think one of the big things that technology can help us is for us to have the data, which will kind of give us the confidence to create strategies and create programs for the future. Because if you lose data, you are unlikely to get the right information to have a larger, and I know everybody is growing. I think as far as India is concerned, all companies are growing. So your CSR, the good news is that your CSR funding is going to grow. That's that's a positive that we have in our lives. But at the same time, you're responsible for talking to your board. A board conversation is never easy. The more you have technology, your board conversation becomes easy, because then you're capturing it in a way where you're able to do it. The other thing is, I think when technology is being created, and we are dealing with some of the technology providers to say, when you're working in CSR and technology, inputs will need to be taken from both sides again, because it cannot be one-sided, because then it can be pretty lopsided. So it's important to get both these things for us, important things. Shruti? Doing good on time? Maybe one more minute and then I close. So I think overall what I want to say is that technology it's in our execution of any strategy that we have. It is not going to be an ad hoc piece. It is going to become a critical piece for each one of us. And we need to learn that, this is something that's, the earlier we start working on that, it's better for us. The last piece I'm going to talk about, and, is as a non-profit, this I'm talking not more for the donors, but more for the partners. As a non-profit today, when you're talking about philanthropy, when you're talking about, there is money beyond CSR, right? And I think for organizations, CSR has its constraints. CSR has to move from project to project, but a non-profit will have to continue working. So there's a huge amount of challenge for the non-profit sector in terms of how you maintain that continuity, where your project is getting over, but you still don't have sight in terms of what is going to happen next. And that's where I think as corporates we need to play an important role to work with our partners to tell them that what are the kind of funding that is available today. You have a huge amount of philanthropic funding from foundations which are available for you. You have impact investing, which is kind of really catching up as far as India is concerned. You today have the social stock exchange. Hemant is here and he's worked really, he's been at the forefront of creating the social stock exchange. So you have these avenues for non-profits to actually receive other kind of funding for you to, and of course this is not easy, I'm not saying, but all I'm saying is that there are, beyond CSR for a non-profit, it's important for CSR professionals to tell your partners, this is where you're operating. You have to get different kinds of funding for you to function in the, to get the impact that you want to create. And in this case, you have to have technology because, your impact investing, your social stock exchange, they are not going to give you any money based on a handwritten report. It's going to be difficult. And that's where I think the technology providers, the non-profits and the CSR people will have to work together, and so with the philanthropy funds and impact investors. Now you have someone who's as reputed as Mr. Vineet Rai today in the audience today as well, and you'll hear from him. But I think the entire piece of impact investing is something, another big piece of funds which is available for the non-profit sector, and technology will play a crucial role for you to raise funds in the future. The more you're more savvy with technology and more you put your governance, your entire running through technology in the best possible manner, I think that's going to be a big shift or a big advantage for the sector at large. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much, and of course hand over to Shruti. I hope this was useful, but of course look forward to interacting with all of you during the day. Thank you. Okay, Shruti says that I have time for question answer. Is there any Q&As? We can keep it for later also while we're interacting, but if you have any immediate questions, happy to take it. Yes. Yes, Shesh.
Thanks for this, Aloka. Just one question from me. Are you considering using some of the new age tech like AI and blockchain, within your CSR process in HSBC?
Yeah, sure. No, thank you so much, Shesh, for that question. Blockchain is becoming important because, we have a huge focus on climate. And the way we work on climate is we work on commodities. So we work on, say, sustainable cotton. So we are working on sustainable cotton. And when we are talking about sustainable cotton, you have to create something called a traceability tool for the thing. And we have actually used blockchain to create that tool. So, let me give you an example, you may think. So cotton, India is the largest exporter of cotton. Now, as a company, who's buying your cotton? It's, your companies abroad who buy cotton. Everybody knows Zara. So they came to us. Inditex is the company, they came to us to say that, we have made a commitment that we are going to buy sustainable cotton. All of our procurement will have to be by first they said 2020, they came to us a few years back. We said it's almost impossible. They made it to 2030. Now, China and India are the two countries who are producing cotton. Now, if we are not doing sustainable cotton, what will they buy? And therefore, from that, we created a CSR program to work on with the government on certified cotton, which is sustainable cotton, and that's how we went. And that's how we have used blockchain. AI, we have not used yet. I'll be honest, this is a new evolving space and we need to see how we do it. And I think we have some discussion today around AI as well. But the important piece will be the blockchain piece is working very, very well in commodities if you're working in farming, because a lot of us in the CSR sector, I'm talking about our partners, they don't know how important their work is. They think you're working with farmers. In the West, when they're talking about farmers, they're talking about supply chain. It's about positioning, right? I mean, it's about, because farmers are the biggest supply chain that we have today. So therefore, in these markets, I think the non-profits will have a very, very important role to play in this blockchain piece. There have been challenges also, Sesh, which I'll take up, share with you during the day. But yes, we have started using this in these programs. Yes.
Yours was an excellent presentation. You covered the various aspects of CSR. We are proud of you. Only two small questions. One is whether any survey has been done to find out the impact of CSR on the society. And number two, AI, how AI could be useful in the working of this CSR.
Yeah.
You can give a small answer, whatever.
Yeah, no, I think, like you said, AI is something we've not tried yet. But we know, and we are going to actually looking forward to the discussions today on AI as well. But I think that's going to play an important role in terms of capturing, anticipating, understanding your audience. Because, the first step for any nonprofit is to actually see that who is your audience, whom are you going to work with. And I'm assuming, because, today as an organization, as a bank, we are using AI to select our customers, right? AI is playing a very important role to define who my customers are. So similarly, I think AI will also play a very important role in that, in figuring out. So that's something, sir, which will come up in the coming days.
Yes,
Yeah, impact, and I mean that's the core of anything that we do. I think that's very important. So the fact is that the impact on society is, that's something we have to see it as a given and then work around it. I mean, we are talking about CSR, strategy, execution, implementation, but at the core of each of us are doing is, at the end of the day, is the impact on society, and that's going to be the critical piece, which will always remain, be it with or without technology.
Madam. There should be some integration on the various aspects of the CSR done by various companies, various people, And
Yeah, I think important point. Yes, in terms of, like you rightly said, because we are currently doing things by ourselves, technology will also help us collaborate more and work together to create scale programs. That's something that can happen in the future, because it's already happening, but it's too little. I think that's something which is an important point Sir has pointed out. So. Sure. Right. No, thank you, and we'll, of course, interact during the day. Yes.
One last question.
Sure, Vinny.
So just pushing a little forward from what Mr. Shah was talking about, I think impact measurement is actually a challenge across the board. It's a challenge in impact investing. It's a challenge around CSR. More so the attribution. So we are spending money. How do you actually associate the change? Because there are many other factors that are playing a role. So we figured out when you sign your balance sheet, the attribution to our effort, because we are the owners, so it actually can come to us, even though government policies, budget, and everything else plays a role. Now, one of the biggest challenge in defining how do you actually try to mimic what is happening in the for-profit space, especially in terms of financial returns, you try to associate on impact returns. And I think one of the bigger debates, which I think leaders like you should probably push on, and this is, by the way, we discussed during, so when we were starting actually the social stock exchange, I was trying to sell an idea called impact coin. So like carbon credits, you need to actually create a coin of impact that would allow, because otherwise we will continue to have this challenge of NGOs not knowing how to raise capital. More so with people like us on impact investing who are actually offering returns, will wean away a significant amount of capital from the NGO sector. So it is not necessarily an issue. The impact measurement is no more an issue about measurement, it is an issue about survival. And for not-for-profit sector and philanthropic investors, both have to now start thinking about technology to create something that will transition into real capital flowing to the philanthropic world. And if we can somehow do it, all credits, notes, and the money from the air has come from Europe. India has an opportunity to actually challenge the world by creating something like this. And there again, both AI and blockchain will have an important role to play. So the reason I actually made this point is because leaders like you, probably who are sitting on capital and giving it away, may have to lead the charge. Because not-for-profits, despite their ability to innovate, are not able to grapple with the opportunity. And when you said use the word development versus charity, it's actually a fairly powerful distinction, which again is not acknowledged. Across the globe, it is not acknowledged. So we are not really playing up to our capabilities, and senior leaders of the corporate world should actually see it as a challenge and help the not-for-profit world to stand up to the global thing. So I just wanted to leave this as a point, not necessarily a question, but a remark.
No, but thank you so much, Vineet. I think a very important point is on this piece. I think the CSR professionals have a very important role to play. Number one, also building capacity of the board to understand that. and as well as for the partners to understand. So I'll tell you that we as an organization, we've really worked with our partners to ensure that how do you define impact? Because there will be some programs where your impact is very, so one is qualitative versus quantitative. We actually sit with the partner to figure out which is the best way to capture it. The second piece we're also putting is risk. Because, you know, when we are working with non-for-profit partners, we don't talk about risk. We always say everything is working well. Like we once saying, we have reached out to X number of people, we have done great work. You're working with the most vulnerable people. So therefore, even when we are measuring impact, you have to put in like, you know, we're in the business of risk. So it's important for each of us to also work with that. But I take your point, Vineet, in terms of the conversation around impact, how we capture it, also to build capacity, because you know today the money that is going from CSR to others is purely going on only project. But there needs to be some funding where we need to go beyond project to build capacity. We use the word build capacity in a very broad way, but that's a very, very important part, and that's something we've been slightly lucky as far as our company is concerned with the board's concurrence on that, but it requires a fair amount of thing. But I think both impact and I will also put in risk, because if it's called out, then you know that, you know, as much when you're lending money to someone today as a bank, you also put risk there. So if you're doing this with a CSR, you need to understand that where they're operating. So these two factors, but we'll have a discussion around it. Thank you, Vineet. So,
sorry, can I have?
Yeah, okay. Question? Maybe the last, I think we are running late for the next one.
Sure. My name is Sunny. I'm from Mahindra & Mahindra.
Okay.
From your presentation, you had mentioned that the CSR budget is increasing. The monitoring and the evaluation, control as well as, interest is growing. However, you also mentioned the fact that, the CSR teams are downsizing. So can you just give us an insight as to, being a global leader, what is the reason that, the team sizes within the company are reducing, however, the impact and the measurement that is required is excessively increasing?
Okay, very important point and a very touchy point for all of us, I'm sure, because we all get it, and it's, let me tell you, it's universal. It's, I mean, at least from what I've interacted with people everywhere, it's, other than organizations who are going down and implementing a program, that's a very different concept, but otherwise it's, so therefore, the point is everybody, we are a cost center. Right? So when you have a cost center, there is importance in a cost center. It's because it's compliance, there's a lot of things, but at the same time, I think the expectation is for us to think a little more innovatively. And I think one of the big things for us, and we have to push our company, which would require some initial investment as well, and that's where I think technology will play a very important role. Because for you and me, with a very limited team, your money is going to grow. You're not going to, your partners will have to utilize the money in that 1 year. So you are going to add partners to your portfolio. So therefore, for us to anticipate and tell the board that this is what reality is, and for us to govern it with a smaller team, this is what we require in terms of investment in technology will be the way forward. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks for the questions too, and looking forward to interacting with all of you. Over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Majumdar, for your insights on leveraging technology for CSR. May I now invite Ms. Pinky Mehta to present the memento to Ms. Majumdar. Please come to the stage, please. Thank you. We now move on to the first panel discussion on technology and social entrepreneurship funding. I would like to welcome our moderator and panelists to the dais. Our moderator for the session, Hemant Gupta, MD, CEO, EQUIPPP Desi Events Private Limited. Our panel members, Anuj Sharma, Founder Director, Alsisar Impact. Mr. Jignesh Thakkar, Partner and COO, ESG Advisory, Head Social and CSR Consulting, KPMG India. Vineet Rai, Founder and Chairman, Avishkar Group. I now request Mr. Hemant Gupta to begin with the session. Over
Hello.
to you, sir.
Good morning. I hope you guys are comfortably settled down. We'll start with an aside. Aloka talked about standardized reporting for impact. And I remember during the early days of social stock exchange, one of the conversations we had was around standardized reporting, because obviously when you're on a stock exchange and you have investors or donors spread across the country, it's very important to be able to compare apples to apples. And from there was born the concept of a social impact assessor, what used to be called a social auditor. Okay, so coming to the topic at hand, there are three key words in this topic. Right? You have social entrepreneurship, technology, and funding. When I was going over the topic, the technology and the social entrepreneurship kind of made sense. They went together. Today we talk about entrepreneurship being about disruption and using technology to solve pressing problems in the world. The funding piece was, I had to kind of weave that in, and that made the whole conversation actually much more interesting to my mind. So what we'll do is we'll spend the next half an hour or so talking about mostly focusing on the funding piece of this topic. One other thing, social entrepreneurship, again, when we were doing the social stock exchange, we had to kind of define what social entrepreneurship was about. In the context of our discussion, we'll keep it as non-profit and for-profit, not just not-for-profit. So panelists, just keep that in mind when we are talking. So what we'll do is we'll start with quick, the panel doesn't need introductions, but I'll still request them to spend 30 seconds each to introduce yourselves. And then we can go ahead with the discussion at hand. Anuj, you want to go first?
Yeah, hi, myself Anuj Sharma. I primarily, I'm the founder of Alsisar Impact. We work with local indigenous people across South Asia. And we believe that economic resilience is a fundamental right. It's not a charity.
Hi, morning everyone. Pleasure to be part of this panel. Thank you so much PCCI for inviting me for this. I'm Jignesh Thakkar. I'm a development sector professional and I've been in the sector for 15, 16 plus years. What I believe and what talks and resonate more about me is the 4I framework which I talk and live and breathe about. It's about designing, delivering, measuring and managing the impact. So that's what my core is. Thank you so much.
Vineet Rai, I'm a forester by training and trying to find my way for the last 25 years in the idea of impact, investing, society and development. Still trying to figure it out. So.
Thank you very much for that. Like Aloka also mentioned, technology has become such a key enabler in social development today, right? And when I first joined this sector about 8 years ago, when the CSR, the Section 135 had just been introduced, one of the key things that had hit me at that point coming from a Citibank kind of environment had been the relative absence of technology in this sector. But I think in the last 8 years, that's changed a lot. And we're now talking about AI and blockchain being used in this sector. The question is that technology and social entrepreneurship, does technology play a role in helping funding for social entrepreneurship, right? And vice versa, And you know, CSR pie is increasing, as Aloka mentioned. However, I think people are also becoming more discerning in terms of how they select, the kind of organizations they select to partner with. And oftentimes, funding today is being given on the basis of how well these organizations are using technology in their day-to-day operations. Perhaps, and that's what we'll try and talk about today, right? So for the purpose of this discussion, we'll kind of go the other way around. So we'll start with Vineet. Vineet, as one of the earlier pioneers of social impact funding, you guys started around 2001. You've seen the entire journey from kind of feature phones and dial-up internet connectivity to leveraging AI and cloud computing. As an investor, how has your investment strategy evolved to leverage this?
Yes, thank you for having me here. I normally avoid being in CSR forums because I have slightly radical views, and not-for-profit world doesn't enjoy radical views, though I know most of you have strong radical views in your own space of operation. So, but I normally avoid it because it becomes confrontational. Having said that, one of the reasons I chose to be here is because I started my foundation right during COVID. And we are actually trying to create an entrepreneurial or support and creation of an entrepreneurial ecosystem in Eastern UP and then all the states in North and East. But right now I'm only focused for next 5 years in Eastern UP. And I was faced with this challenge as how do you actually, so people ask me, why do you choose Eastern UP? Easier answer, I come from there. More difficult answer, India's per capita GDP is $2,650. UP's per capita GDP is $1,250. Eastern UP is around $500. Now, thumb rule-ish, Eastern UP is around 8% of India. UP is around 16% of India. And without UP's per capita GDP going up, you are not going to really impact the per capita GDP of India itself. On the second side, if you go and ask anybody in Eastern UP, what do you want to be? Entrepreneurship does not actually feature into the list of options. They want IAS, IPS, Daroga, Tehsildar, Block Development Officer, Peon, all that will feature, but no entrepreneurship, even though a large number of people are entrepreneurs simply because they have no other way. So it's called necessity-based entrepreneurship, but not aspiration-based entrepreneurship. The world is actually in a very unique place now. Those who are poor, the pyramid, we talk about the base of the pyramid. Unfortunately, in the pyramid of aspiration, there is no base because the pyramid of aspiration is absolutely flat. So a boy in a government school in class 10th in the remotest part of India, anywhere northeast or in Eastern UP, aspires to have the same life that a boy in maybe Reliance Foundation School or in the best school here, or Bombay Scottish, coming from the richest family. So the aspiration is exactly the same, partly because of the communication technology, because they see the same videos. Unfortunately, the resource and exposure pyramid exactly stayed as it was when C.K. Prahlad came up with the base of pyramid theory. And that really is the challenge. We have this massive debate around jobless growth. Microfinance, which is a sector that actually employs 10th pass students and give them 50,000 rupees, 40,000 rupees average monthly salary, has a 42% attrition. Can you please explain to me where do these 42% people go if there are no jobs? In reality, the problem is a mismatch between jobs that are available and the aspiration of the people, because Indians by nature are seeking white-collar jobs. So this is actually the context of developmental challenge that we are facing, and a large number of these problems are emanating from technology, because technology has gone and reached every nook and corner. We carried out a survey in our microfinance company called Arohan, and to my surprise, we claim to work with the poorest of poor. Within microfinance, we have the smallest loan, average loan outstanding. 67% of our women, their family had an access to a smartphone. 67%. And I'm talking about UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Northeast, not South India. Now that tells you the power that technology has in influencing our decisions, their decisions, and everybody's decisions. And then it comes to how do you use technology to influence it. So when I started in 2001, technology was never a discussion. And when we thought about technology, it was actually in terms of machine and other things. The softer aspect of technology and its ability to influence everybody's discussion. I don't think so in 2001 we ever thought that a grandmother and a grandchild will have a discussion over Facebook. But that's where the interaction is today. It was not even part of our imagination and thinking. So has technology impacted? Yes. Has it influenced NGOs and decision making and the flow of money? That I think is actually a big challenge. And I think money is still a relationship-oriented activity rather than a technology-oriented activity. Having said that, if you have to move the money to the people, that relationship has to be backed by evidence. And I think that evidence is where technology becomes extremely important. So we used to take decisions based on passion of the people. Then we realized over time that passion's role in delivering results is questionable. Passion sustains the entrepreneur's longevity, but it does not sustain or deliver scale of impact. And that is where the divergence is coming from. The capital today is not coming because a founder has set aside money. It is coming from a large institution that is trying to see impact in the same format in which actually they are delivering returns to their investors, which is evidence-based, scale-based. And this is where the dichotomy is. The NGOs are still dealing with emotional relationship-based philanthropy, while the provider of capital has moved towards evidence-based, scale-focused impact. And I think this dichotomy, there are two things that can play a role. One is governance, which unfortunately is not a very common word used in the parlance of not-for-profits. But without governance, you will have serious problems in attracting any kind of capital. And we don't have a track record of actually having strong governance because we have strong leaders with weak governance in not-for-profit sectors. And this is a major problem. And the second part of the problem is essentially how do you provide evidence of impact at scale? And seeing is believing doesn't work anymore. So these are the two areas where I think both on the for-profit side and the not-for-profit side, and if anybody wants to understand what I am saying, just read the newspaper and see what is happening in startup ecosystem. Strong leaders, poor governance is equal to constant news of disaster after disaster in capital. Go Mechanic and many other companies, you will not forget, they keep coming. We keep facing these challenges. So therefore, if we don't correct these two things and use technology to correct them, which essentially leads to significant transparency, that brings to our favorite topic of social stock exchange. And I'll conclude by saying the whole argument behind social stock exchange, and I'm a personal believer, even though I was actually part of the drafting committee and on the permanent committee now, that we never had capital because CSR was kept out of social stock exchange. So the only value add that we were offering from social stock exchange is transparency. And transparency, which led to accountability, because there is a punishment in case you really misquote facts and figures in your claims. And second, you have to forecast what you are going to do. Forecasting impact and then being held accountable for that forecast. So held accountable does not mean that if you miss your targets, you will be penalized, but you will be asked question in case you miss target. And these are the two things we focused on while creating social stock exchange, where technology can play a role. So I'll just stop here. Sorry for the very long.
No, thank you. Very interesting and very, very thought-provoking, Vineet. Thank you so much for that. Scale, evidence, governance, very important things that you've talked about. Jignesh, you started your journey in the social sector around the same time, 2002, wasn't it? Yeah. And you spent a lot of time working with for-profit, not-for-profit, and entrepreneurs. In your current role, often advising them on raising funds for projects. So what, for these entrepreneurs, for these founders, profit and not-for-profit, what do you think is the importance of technology? So one was the investor side. Now coming to the other side, right? The people who are actually raising funds. From their perspective, how do they view technology as playing a role in this whole process?
Perfect. No, very important question. The other side of the lens is equally important because when we talk about capacity building, it's bridging the gap between what the expectations are while both chase the impact. One is investing capital, one is investing human resource side of it, and bringing about the change. From that literal term, what I'm going to talk about is what is happening at a very small scale. But I think that's the beauty about it, because if it is already happening at a large scale, the challenge is we will not be able to learn and fail faster. So what I'm going to talk about is some examples which we have seen, which not-for-profits are leveraging right now. Technology when they're seeking funding. Right from stage zero, about identifying that if I'm going to fund in, let's say, a geography X for a problem Y, who could be my prospective donors for this? So the stage starts there, because I don't want to kind of reach out to anyone in the market and say, hey, Aloka, do you have these funds? Hey, gentlemen, do you have these funds? No. I think the social entrepreneurship and the social enterprises as defined in the social stock exchange / CSR, which is more, who are focusing on the social problems which are there, economic and environmental put together. They're trying to leverage technology to be as narrow as possible before they reach out to donors. Cold calling is gone off. Which means the efforts which possibly 10 individuals would have to make to reach 200 donors is now reducing by using technology. The second part which comes in is to do a bit of research about individuals whom you meet. Well, many of you will be thinking, are you really serious? Yes. Just as you do KYC, just as the corporates do KYC, I've seen NGOs do KYC as well. Social enterprises also do KYC. Whom am I going to meet? What are their profiles all about? What are they doing? What is the culture which they're expecting? What kind of things are they really looking forward from when they are going to fund me for this program? So they are becoming much and much smarter to know the customer, to know the donor, if I may put it as a donor as a word, rather more as an investor in the program. They're trying to understand this more legitly than ever before, because that gives them confidence. Is there a bit of an ideology which we are able to share? Is it purely a philanthropic fund which they're going to give, which I don't want philanthropic funding? Or is it more which is an impact investing, because we are also geared up that we want to deliver impact in 3 years, which is not, irreversible to some extent because of the ecosystem in which we operate. Problem changes, advances. So that's the second area in which we are seeing not-for-profits are leveraging. The third is writing proposals. Many of you would be using Teams, ChatGPT and all of it. Have you tried asking them, can you create a proposal for me for this particular company seeking this grants for creating a change on this problem statement for reaching out to X kind of subgroup of beneficiaries in this geography, and my proposal should have these sections which are there. It should talk about not just the national and SDG data points which are international, but it should also provide me what is the district level data on this. What do you think the answer would be? It will provide you a very good, well-drafted report, which is your proposal. Of course, it is going to be as smart as we make it learn. So it might be 70-80% closer to the reality. You can immediately ask them, change the format, change this, and it will do it for you. But with that limited intervention of 5, 10, 20%, your proposals will be good enough, curated enough to provide you a lot of secondary data and all of it to put it together into a bunch of it. Of course, your heart of the program for which you are seeking investment is your own baby. That they will not be able to make out unless that data is also available publicly. So that's from the writing of proposals is where social enterprises are leveraging to an extent in India, globally as well. Now, you are able to see efficiencies at each stages, reduced human resource. It's not about AI reducing jobs, it's about AI assisting us in fruitful creation of jobs, I would say. Because if the same person is doing what a technology could do, I don't want to do that job, correct? That's what the ask is. But the efficiency does not stop here in terms of funding, because there is obsessive monitoring disorder in the sector. Company A asking something else, company B asking something else, charities commissioner asking something else, SSE asking something else. So there is a whole ecosystem which is asking the same impact data in 20 different formats at a different frequency, which no one knows which frequency is the right frequency for what kind of data points. With that being the case, technology can play an enabler role there also for them to be more effective on managing the progress towards impact, which in turn can also be leveraged when the end of the program is over there. So with this, kind of conclude that is across the life cycle, I am able to see that you could raise funds, you could manage funds, you could raise funds for impact, you could manage impact. Thank you.
Thanks, Jignesh. Very interesting. KYD, know your donor, right? Good one. So in fact, that reminds me, Aloka, you were talking about terrorists screening, right? I remember when I was doing the KYC unit for corporate bank, that used to be one very key thing, these anti-terrorist lists. Now it's coming to the not-for-profit sector also. Okay. All right, Anuj. So you've actually been on both sides, right? For-profit, not-for-profit, founder, investor. You've also been working in some of the less worked upon areas of the country like the Himalayas and the Northeast. What's your perspective on this topic? Is it something that people on the ground actually pay attention to a lot? Right?
Yeah, thanks, Hemant. I think, first of all, we need to get into some perspective. Today, just 100 families own 30% of Indian wealth. So if I knock out $1 trillion, then see 1.5 billion population with $2.5 trillion, where we are in terms of per capita GDP. Same way, good news. Last week, the news came that one family owned 1/10 of Indian wealth. So if I have to get into that kind of celebration, we are getting into a different thing. Second, I don't think CSR is a cost center. It's a lifeline. So what is the last time you did a corporate social responsibility without doing tax saving? In this room. Have you ever done it? Not a single billionaire has done any philanthropic work without having tax saving. They have always used that as a tool for tax saving. Second, let's also be clear. If I'm not doing social good, I will not be able to survive as a business. So opposite of social is anti-social. And I can't survive. So it's important for me, for my lifeline, that I need to do social good. It's important for my business. It is important for my well-being as well. And when we talk about technology, it is only kind of dividing things. We are talking about lots of processes. Do you think local indigenous people have time for doing it? Like, you say you save climate, you save environment, you save forest. But we would like to have hundreds of processes to do it, and 80% of the money which we are giving will only go into the processes. Do you think I will have time? I'll say I will cut my trees. Hell to you. There's an example. I was trying to work with a entrepreneur, an indigenous person, in Siachen Base Camp, which is world's longest glacier, and the originator of the Indus River. And lots of big corporates, and obviously the CSRs, and that's it. Just 140 families, it's too small. Fair enough. The day the Siachen Glacier melts, there's no Indus River. No Pakistan, because Pakistan lifeline is all about Indus River. Same way, lots of other rivers are coming from Himalayas. Least people live there because it's hard to live. So I can talk about plains where I can talk about Ganga, Yamuna and others. But what about the people who are the custodian of this whole thing? So CSR is mainstream. It is lifeline for us. And for that, technology should not be a barrier. It should be an enabler. And it should be easy. If it is not easy, we should not be using technology. I was in New York and Sam Altman is saying that what you're seeing ChatGPT, it will be dinosaur in 1 year. And I said, okay, fine. Can you change the climate change pattern in California? And he was just awaiting the question. Because he can't even avoid the forest fires which are happening in California with the so-called AI. You can't do it. Technology is enabler because humans are requiring some basic things. We need fresh water, fresh air, and fresh food. And without that, we can't survive. So technology has to have an intersection of social and economic good as well. And for that, we need to find something which is more easier. Otherwise, we'll keep discussing, and most of our budgets are only going into the overheads, not going to the actual people. So let's think about that and take it to the next level.
It's actually very important, Anuj. Yeah, sure. Please go ahead, Mani.
I think the points are all valid. The problem is actually not the point, because some of us have been remitting same arguments. The problem is, how do you change the world? The world is, I mean, from a thumb rules perspective, all the global aid is around, the whole global aid, and I mean adding World Bank, I'm adding all the BIIs of the world, everybody put together, is actually roughly around 600 billion, 600, 700 billion. And when we did, this is annually, so, and we did our calculation, I was part of the social business commission for social this thing. We did a calculation for 2030 SDGs, what amount is needed. It's $2.5 trillion every year. Now, there is no way you can actually use philanthropic money to change the world. Because it's not that the world doesn't have money. $2.5 trillion is roughly $30 trillion. We did this calculation in 2018. So $30 trillion was needed to be invested for there to have a world without hunger, without poverty, without inequity. Now, on one side, sounds like a large amount. After taking out the rich people's wealth, it's $2.5 trillion India's thing. But if you look at the global wealth, the total capital is $400 trillion. Correct. So the world is sitting on $400 trillion. What we are asking you to sacrifice the world is 1% of its growth, or less than 1% of its growth. So if the world GDP, instead of growing at 3%, grows at 2.2%, that $2.5 trillion is very easy to be actually invested in saving the world. The point, therefore, is we have to come up with an argument that goes beyond the emotion that was just expressed. The emotion is unfortunately not moving the world. People actually get over it. So Pakistan khatam ho gaya, there will be so many people who will make you a celebrity. Ki yaar isko khatam hi kar do. Siachen band ho jaye, Pakistan khatam. You don't want to be a celebrity by killing a nation, but that's unfortunately how people think. And so therefore we have to find that argument. And the reason I keep coming back to technology is because I spent a lot of time trying to understand the carbon credit model. It's a fairly smart act of creating money out of thin air. Of course it is being abused, and human being has this great capability to abuse anything good. But if you can actually help and take money out of Shell's pocket to actually help poor Indians or poor Indonesians or poor anywhere to live in their forest, own the tree, own the fruit, keep the tree, and actually keep the land and pay nothing back for hundreds of millions of dollars going there, then that's a beautiful concept. We just need to figure out, and that's why the whole idea of impact coin is, how do you trade the good things that you are doing? And it also solves your problem of 140 families. When you're actually talking about 140 families, and the impact of those 140 families is in terms of equal to probably 100 million people, and we can show it by creation of the value of the impact coin, the higher integrity, so that 140 family probably is worth equal to 100,000 people. And how do we communicate this is actually the problem, because the CSR person at the lower end is actually only looking at 140. They do not know the multiple that comes with it. Correct. And technology can allow you to do that. And that's where I think we need to find, and that's where we have to probably launch a challenge to get the world's best talent to look at this social problem of diverting significant capital to activities that unfortunately do not have a commercial return, but still make it commercial in the minds of those who are participating. And I think as a collective to this room, that is the challenge, and it requires the best talent. It does not require great passion, but it requires the best talent. And the passion has to be then sold to them. We have to somehow convince them to like Anuj, he speaks passion. That passion, Anuj, you have to sell to that talent so that we can convert that 140 people into 140 million people. And you will see everybody then invest into it.
I think very important point. And Anuj, to what you were saying, partly I guess what you're saying is that technology should not be a means in itself. There has to be an end objective, there has to be a purpose, and I think we need kind of expanded on that very beautifully. That has to translate into something outside people understand, in a language that they can measure, that they can compare, and then they can decide whether it's worth the investment and the effort. Just keeping my eye on the watch, just one last round of questions. We need anything that from a technology viewpoint that we should be careful about, wary about, something that can be abused? And I'll ask the same question to Jignesh and Anuj also.
In my view, everything, human mind is so smart that it abuses everything that you create. So every good, it's two sides of the coin. Right. So technology can do a lot of good, it can do a lot of bad as well. And that's where, when we talk about, so what is audit and risk? Audit is looking backward and trying to seek evidence that everything that was told is right. Risk is actually predicting what can go wrong. And I think, therefore, whenever you look at technology and human interaction, you have to ask yourself, what are the potential of the abuse? So when I talk about impact coin, can it be abused? Of course it will be abused. You have to keep finding, and that's why regulators are so loath to cryptos and everything else, because they do not understand what can go wrong with those agencies. And similarly, this whole idea of impact coin, which I keep selling, is going to hit a hurdle because it's very difficult to estimate right now where things can go wrong. And one of the use of technology is to actually create barriers to the money and actually to take out 80% of the CSR into something else.
Yeah.
So that actually is human ingenuity. We want to have that ingenuity level of the passionate people higher than the ingenuity level of those who have corrupting influence. That's really the game. I mean, we should actually start a course on greed management in all MBAs, especially IIMs and Harvard and
Absolutely,
Stanford.
completely agree.
Because greed is actually one of the biggest destruction we have sold and the capitalist world has brought. So how do you deal with that, where you want GDP to grow and greed to go down? That's actually an oxymoron.
Correct.
Itself.
Absolutely. No, thank you, Vineet. That was excellent. Jignesh, technology sometimes has a non-human, I'll not say inhuman, that might be the wrong use of the word, but a non-human face, right? It dehumanizes things. What do you think? Does that have a role to play?
So I think if you look into it, I think it is more you getting an extra hand, ear, eye, and a head put together for you. A lot of time we believe it's more external to us, but at the same time, if you start acknowledging it, that that's also a life in it, and that can actually help you in some other way, that inhumanness from it is something which could go away. I know a lot of people just see this as an instrument, but a lot of people see that more as life to it. While being a father for 4.5, I know how much of it can play as an impact on his role of abusing technology on what he watches and what he kind of then acts upon it. But having said that, I think there are numerous examples where technology, human inhuman, whichever way we call it, the point is it is assisting us in agriculture, it is assisting us in healthcare sector, it is assisting us in the education, skilling and livelihood sector, it is assisting us a big way in environmental side of it, which then in turn, has an impact on the societal and the environmental and the economic levels which are there. So to me, there's both an enabler, and at the same time, it is also playing a role as a service and a solution to all of us. And I see there is a great advantage to it. Of course, challenges around being ethical AI and ethics attached to AI put together and the technology.
Great,
Please,
thanks.
Thank you.
Anuj, you and I have worked together on a couple of startups, Descat UK and Curalgia, which basically leverage technologies for doing great work, one in the Himalayas and the second in Mumbai. To your mind, and the scale of India requires something more than passion, going back to what Vineet was saying. To your mind, what would be the place you would like technology to play, the role that you would like technology to play in the social development of India?
So first of all, if I'm giving a problem, I should also talk about the solution, right? So I was talking about Siachen. So the good news is, this boy which I was talking, he has an enterprise which is $1 million now, and he's able to give 140 plus jobs now he's creating in his own village. So that creates a very different kind of a positive side. So what we are talking is localizing the solutions is very important. India is a very diverse country. Like we have 29 states, which is equivalent to like 29 new countries kind of thing. Dialect change, customs change, tradition change. So we have come up with very simple thing called lighthouse place-based investing, backing only locals. So if I'm in Kashmir, only backing Kashmiri. If I'm Ladakh, only backing Ladakhi. Owned and led startups. Or even if I'm saying NGOs, owned and led. Nothing more than that. So I cannot solve a problem of Ladakh from Bombay. It has to be solved by people from Ladakh. The same way, Uttarakhand, there are just hardly 2 startups which are actually private limited. And they are from owned and led by locals. And they know the problem of Uttarakhand villages. They are getting ghost villages every single month. Like if you go in the upper parts, hardly any people are there. There's no farming, there are no villages, there's no elders left because everybody is migrated. So if you're talking about all these important, it's not just about strategic, it's also about a very important nature-based conservation which needs to happen because locals needs to be there. So localization is very important. So we are talking about technology which the people don't understand and they need not to understand as well. I'm a forest dweller, I should not understand ChatGPT. I should not understand the RFPs or the contracts and others, it's of no use. So can I make it more simple? And to make it simple, we are here. But we should not eat the bigger pie. If I eat 80-90% of that pie, then what is left for doing the development work? That's something we should question as well. And second is, as I was saying, I'm part of the corporate as well. All the billionaires we are talking about, we should thrive. We should have more billionaires, yes. But we should have also equitable growth of the other people as well. It's equal. It's important for me as well because the food is grown by the farmers. And if I'm saying farmers needs to be rich, the farmers needs to be entrepreneurs. We cannot keep saying that I will have a trading model, 109 unicorns of India, and majority of our trading model who have never done anything on the ground, and they claim that we are unicorns just because I know how to hack the valuation and I can afford the best lawyers and CAs. That's not the right thing. The same in technology as well. So if we can have an enabling effect, that will be very good. And especially for our own good self, like as a country, if we can have to go to the next level, we need more equitable growth of wealth and technological access. But for that, I cannot have an Excel sheet person getting paid more than the farmers.
Sure, absolutely. No, the very good point. I mean, you guys heard very diverse views from the panel, and I think very interesting and thought-provoking views. We probably have time for a few questions, do we? Yeah? All right, so I think we have a few hands raised. We'll start with the gentleman on the right. And please state your name, where you're from, who you're directing the question to, and the question.
I'm directing the question to Vineet Rai. I'm Ramon Shetty. I'm a strategic advisor at Digital Marketing Agency. I want to know how the Jagriti Yatra is doing in the Eastern UP. Heard a lot in LinkedIn over the last 6 months.
That question should actually go to the CEO of Jagriti Yatra because I have nothing to do with it. But of course, because I come from there and he has, by the founder, has become the MP now from Devariya. But I actually, they have set up an incubator and I actually just did we did an entire activity in Kushinagar Devariya at his center and basically invested in some of the entrepreneurs that they have incubated. Pretty much what Anuj has been talking about. So UP government has actually something called One District, One Product scheme, and terracotta happens to be a scheme. The question that begs to be asked is, while I was actually investing in those women who all have started terracotta because government has said terracotta is a great, so this is One District, One Product. So I asked them, so where do you get the clay for the terracotta? They said there are 2 villages in Gorakhpur. I said, and if 50 entrepreneurs are going to produce terracotta, then how long will that clay last? They said, oh, it's God's gift, it will not last. I said, madam, it's a God gift till only one person was producing, not 500 people producing. And so unfortunately, there won't be any clay left because they genuinely think that it is God's gift and it will keep coming out. But we know, and I was actually having a conversation on sustainability with the Hindalco team, and they said, if we ever reach mineral consumption at Europe standards, if the world reaches mineral consumption at Europe standards, you require 2 Earth. Just Europe standards of mineral consumption, you require 2 Earth right now. So we have already crossed this Earth's capability to produce. So long story short, Jagriti Yatra is a wonderful induction of all entrepreneurs into India. And I think what Shashank Mani Tripathi is trying to do is also trying to influence those social entrepreneurs to learn from what he's doing in the village level. And hopefully more people will actually do like Anuj is doing, many others are doing. And we are also trying to actually support and influence. They have created a very large infrastructure. I am actually a very anti-infrastructure guy. But having said that, in a feudal ecosystem like Eastern UP, if you don't build a building, nobody respects you. So building a building is actually equally important for influencing the locals. So you have to work like locals and not like Bombay. So an Excel sheet doesn't work in UP. You show them an Excel sheet, they will start laughing at you. But a building of 10 crores will beat an Excel sheet of 1,000 crores. So you have to keep all that in mind.
Thanks. Thank you, Vineet. I hope that answered your question. I'm sorry, I couldn't see you behind.
That's okay. It's always the mysteries that lie behind. My name is Aditya from Basis Fund Services, and I am amplifying what Vineet has said and what Anuj has said, and that is कृषि व्यवसाय से उठकर उद्योग बनना चाहिए. और इस क्षेत्र में मैं काम कर रहा हूँ, so I can amplify, I can understand what you're saying कि फार्मर्स जब कमोडिटी बेचते हैं तो कमोडिटी का फ्लक्चुएशन उनको लगता है, मगर प्रोडक्ट जब बन जाता है तो प्रोडक्ट इतना फ्लक्चुएट नहीं होता. दूसरा चीज़, आपने लोकल एम्प्लॉयमेंट की बात करी और मेरे खुद का अनुभव है, क्योंकि मैं त्रिपुरा अगत्रा में ऑफिस खुला है और वहाँ पे लोग काम कर रहे हैं, उसके जो प्रभाव पड़ रहा है मैं देख रहा हूँ. तीसरा, आपने एट्रिशन के बारे में कहा, एंड आई फुली एग्री विथ यू दैट India faces not an unemployment problem, but an appropriate employment problem, because all of us in the service industry face this problem of attrition, and I'm kind of tired of this political dialogue that says naukri nahi hai. Thank you so much.
Did you also have a question?
No, I just wanted to amplify, okay, because amplifying makes sense. It endorses the statement.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right. Questions, comments? Yes, please.
So thank you. Very interesting conversation. Is there, when I'm hearing all of you, and you mentioned about, that 140 thing, and everybody wants, you want to go to 1 million people, you want to reach through your programs. Do you see that there is a lack of trust as far as the implementation agencies, as we would call it, or the non-profits, charities, whatever you call it at the ground level, and say the CSR people? Do you see there is a lack of trust, lack of understanding? Is that something that you see happening?
Can I take that? Can I take a shot at it first?
Yeah.
Okay, so, again, going back to 8 years ago, I joined the sector, right? The first thing that hit me, and it's coming from a completely corporate environment. The first thing that hit me was that you had a room that had corporates and you had NGOs, and it was like, it was two sides. There was the big elephant in the room was complete lack of trust. Right? But I think the situation has changed a lot. Part of it has probably to do with corporatization of NGOs, where these not-for-profit organizations also have become more corporate in the way they conduct their business, in the way they interact with the outside world. And partly also it has to do with the fact that earlier the CSR departments or the corporates used to be an HR guy or a finance guy or double hatting as. I think they're more professionals on the corporate side who also have an understanding of what the social sector is all about and are not just writing a check. And therefore, that elephant in the room has probably become smaller, but I don't think it's gone away. It would be my perspective. I'm happy to.
So it is something like if you see absolutely right what Vineet said, we can't do things from Bombay. We need to earn the trust of locals. So I'll give an example of Kashmir, because Ladakh, if I say, it will be a more emotional subject. So I was actually called by the Director Intelligence North India, and he said how on earth you can work there, because you need a cover, like actual security cover. I said, sir, I work with locals, so I don't need it. And that's the time when 2019 thing was happening, and then obviously Article 370 happened. And we were working with 4 entrepreneurs there, and I used to go every single time to their houses. I used to stay there as well. And we were one of the first white-collar people to go in Kashmir after Article 370 abrogation as well. And this entrepreneur has created more jobs than Government of India creating in Kashmir. It took time, but today if you see, mainstreaming happens different way. Shark Tank called them, mainstream investors called them, and they're showering with money, but also the social, they wanted to take selfies and say, hey, look, your story, CEO goes and takes selfie because she also needs a validation that, hey, number one, like Twitter trend, the same way Shark Tank also got into it. But it takes time, as we say, and you can't fake these things. So if we are talking about farmers, local people or indigenous people, even in Maharashtra, if we say, how many times we will have local peoples getting backed? If we have to back them, we have to back them. That's the only way we can have, and it takes time.
I think I'm just sharing one thing because we have a large portfolio. We work in Manipur and the Northeast and for many years now. Yeah. And why we have seen, you're absolutely right, that in India, when you're doing something locally, it has to be implemented by the local people. To Vineet's point, passion and development is it's a very big debate. And you're right that somewhere we have to come together to get it. One of the things where we've seen technology working, in Manipur, what we've realized, all are local organizations. You know, your VVD, your Chanura, whoever we work with. But because of technology, the connect remained. So therefore, there was no gap. See, because from a CSR professional piece, and I'm sharing for a lot of other peers, I come from an organization where I have a very mature board. So largely we take the decisions and it's taken. But you know, you have various CSR professionals dealing at various levels of the board. Because we had that connect in technology, and you're right, the farmer may not be, but the organization who was dealing with at least did that connect, that, you know, even in these times when it's going through really perhaps one of the worst phases. But at least we're getting the information and we know. So therefore we know that the work has to go on. We also have to got the risk. You know, we've gone ahead and said that it might be impacted because of this reason. And it's everybody knows, it's in the media. So therefore, you know, the board will be very clear, yes, it can. You know, today what was supposed to be implemented over, say, a year may go on to 3 years. I'm just saying, I mean, it can happen. But I'm just saying that technology, we've seen, Anuj, play an important role in that connect. Because at the end of the day, as a CSR professional, and this I'm talking about on behalf of all our peers, that one is answerable to the board today. And therefore, we've seen that connect helps. Because in building that trust, that connect actually has helped us. I mean, just sharing.
No, absolutely right. But if I take how the technology bottlenecks happen, in Nagaland, I was trying to put my own money. And it took us 6 months to open up a current account because banks were not ready. They were not ready to open up an investment account. So I had to hack the system. I called one of the senior officer from the bank in one of the leading banks and said, Mera account hai. Khul do. They opened it and then we shipped the money from Bombay in Nagaland. Why? Because for the last 65 years, Government of India has demarcated Nagaland as a disturbed geography. And there's no disturbance. So I'm just trying to say we have to also open up our mindsets in terms of how technology is used. If you have to do a net transfer pay addition in Nagaland, you have to send in a queue. You can't do online.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that also information is important. Because, you know, at times we take it for granted. Like nobody, if you have a, I'm just saying, if an ICICI bank there, everybody will say, यहाँ पे तो bank है, problem क्या है, होना चाहिए. But what you're facing, at times what happens is something which is very basic, we don't communicate. But this one instance can actually, you know, bring that problem at the front and say, okay, there is a problem there, we need to kind of address it. Right. I think that's also, communication therefore is a very important part when we are dealing with the kind of issues that we are dealing with, particularly in one of the most vulnerable areas as well.
But this is a developed world problem, you know. Opening a bank account in Luxembourg may take you 9 months. So is same in Germany. So you are in a good company.
Okay. Yes, there's one at the back. It's probably 1 minute and 5 seconds. Name, organization, who you're addressing to?
I run a climate action startup called Above Ground. My question to you is a little bit more broad. From the way we see it, the solution to larger problems are less technology limited and more influence limited, right? So for a young startup like us, how do we prepare ourselves to deal with legislative and public sector side of, solving large problems like?
I'm sorry, technology or by quantitative, but more by influence and factors. I don't know who wants to take this one. That's a tough one. I'll be honest with you. Yeah.
Your biggest advantage is you are young. So just get on any stage and start abusing everybody. I can vouch that's the only way to get attention. You have nothing to lose. आपको क्या होगा जैसे बंद कर देंगे बंद हो जाए. But I can tell you, you will be faster. You will have much more ability to influence. I was a forester, 29-year-old. Nobody wanted to talk to me, so I used to get on any stage and say whatever. And at least of course, people will get upset. So a lot of people got upset with me. But people from IFC, ICICI Bank, Mr. Wagul, I managed to reach there by actually saying random stuff about large guys in. How would otherwise anybody comes to know that you are trying to make a difference? So you have to stand out, and the easiest way to stand out when you are young is to, otherwise you will have gray hairs, by that time you lose the passion. So when with black hairs, fearless. The world is not changed by wise people. The world is changed by those who don't know things cannot be done. You don't know. So don't actually try to say influence and other things matter. They don't. A fearless guy with the right statement. A child said the emperor has no clothes. So be that child, be fearless, and you will change the world.
I think on that note we shall end. That's a very good way to end. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank our speakers for the thought-provoking deliberations. Now I would like to invite Mr. Sandeep Khosla to present the mementos to our speakers. I request our moderator and the panelists to stay back for a group photo. We will take a short 15-minute break. Request you all